Are you the pilot or me? I believe YouTube may have saved our lives. Uneasy face. Excel.
Iwan Gong.
So, a while back my GF wanted to treat us to something special. A tour flight over a major city in the Netherlands, where we live. The flight would take us approximately 1 to 2 hours and we'd get to see several major sites. But from the air. Now, I'm not going to lie, I had some doubts about all this, also because I'm not exactly fond of major heights. But I was going to see it through, but not without some preparation. I took to YouTube and watched several videos about aviation. But not just the good stuff. I also found some channels that were going over accidents from the past and shared in-depth diagnoses as to what could have gone wrong and how some issues might have been avoided, if possible, of course. This taught me about several do's and don't, but most of all, good practices. The incident. Everything started out pretty normal. My GF had booked the tour with a seemingly well-known company and we met at a local airfield. We briefly talked things over and the three of us ended up in the plane. Now, I was a little nervous but wasn't going to let this get to me, but I did ask the pilot some basic questions. Like, so, how heavy is this plane exactly? And how much fuel did you take on board? Both out of curiosity but also because I wanted to make sure everything was okay. Well, then things got weird. The pilot looks at me if I said something stupid and muttered something in the likes of, "We got enough," and basically brushed it off. Well, that wasn't doing me any good, so I asked something else. So, what's the checklist all about? And this time the pilot actually starts to look annoyed. Isn't that kind of obvious? He asks / tells me, to which my GF suddenly responds, "If it is so obvious, then why not just give us an answer?" That almost set him off, at least that was my impression. "Look, I already did all that an hour ago. Okay?" He actually snaps at us. "Are we done now? Anything else?" Honestly, I was not feeling confident at all anymore, but tried one more time. "So, what's the weather going to be like? Got any forecasts?" After which the guy literally snapped, "Look, are you the pilot or me? What's with all those questions?" Which is when I also snapped, "Okay, we're done here. I want out. I'm canceling all this." Well, that got him angry. We got out of the plane and he shouted that we wouldn't have to be expecting any refunds. My GF told me that she was mighty disappointed, but at the same time also fully agreed with me that this was a seriously bizarre experience. Why get so defensive about some simple, curious questions? "I got it all on film, by the way," my GF told me. Right after the pilot's first snarky comment, my GF also sensed something odd. So she started filming. Her phone caught everything. Getting a lawyer involved. We contacted the main company and told them that we wanted to file a complaint, and also requested a refund because the flight never happened and we felt mighty unsafe. We basically stated that we got the strong impression that the pilot wasn't too friendly and didn't seem to care much for any safety concerns. Well, our complaints weren't taken seriously and we were basically told that we agreed with their rules up front, so we could forget about getting any refunds. Unsure what to do next, I decided to try and reach out to the YouTuber whose channel I had been watching and asked if they could give us some advice. I explained what happened and that we also had a video. I wasn't expecting anything to happen, but much to my surprise, after a week or so I actually got a response. We chatted a bit and I showed them the video. The guy completely roasted the whole event. He had nothing good to say about it at all and basically called the whole thing highly unprofessional, immature, and he actually complimented us for going with our gut feeling on this. So we decided to contact a lawyer. And based on all our evidence, they decided to take this to court. Wait, video? You can't have video. The trial was insane and very satisfying. Our lawyer presented our case. Then their lawyer made their defense. They even had an impartial expert talking about how professional the pilot was and how nothing had happened, blah, blah. The guy seemed kind of arrogant to me, but boy was I wrong about him. The defense lawyer basically stated that we had agreed to the company's terms and that we were only sore customers who should have known that a refund wasn't possible. Then our lawyer presented the case in more detail and stated that we also had a video. To which the pilot, who sat in the audience, stood up and had a major outburst. "You can't have a video, that's illegal. No one is allowed to film during the flight," he shouted and was promptly warned by the judge to shut it. First, our lawyer told the judge that the given argument was bogus because the rules which we agreed to specifically allowed for filming, even invited on doing so. so the video was played in court. After that, our lawyer raised more arguments as to why we should be granted a refund, and then it was the defense lawyer's turn to react to the video. Next moment, the guy who had been praising the pilot, the guy who basically acted on behalf of the defense, suddenly slips a note to our lawyer. We didn't even realize that this was happening. He basically asked a clerk to pass his note on to our lawyer. Yeah. Their impartial expert turned out to be actually unbiased and impartial, for real. And he was not impressed with the things he saw in that video. Not just that. He had asked our lawyer if he could be allowed to give a statement on our behalf because he was plain out shocked about the way things went. And that is exactly what happened next. He was allowed to speak and react to the video, and he too described the whole incident as highly unprofessional and even called it a potential concern for safety. At the end of the day, the judge ruled in our favor. The company had to issue us a refund as well as cover all the court fees. And they eventually did. A new tour. We thought about it and discussed it but decided to give it one more try. This was a few months later, by the way. But this time we did a bit more research on the company which we booked our flight with, and this time things went completely different. First, it seemed like déjà vu because I once again asked the pilot how heavy the plane was, and told him that I was curious about the checklist. He asked me if I was familiar with these procedures, and I told him that I wasn't, but that I had picked up some basics from YouTube. The next 15 minutes he explains everything to us. The checklist which he's about to do, the weather report he's about to request. He even told us that he had over 200 flight hours with that very plane we were in. We never asked. And even while he's doing his checklist, he points at the controls, tells us what things do. And it was a really pleasant and very nice experience. Definitely impressive. And so completely different than before. I was still quite nervous when we got in the air, and for a few moments was feeling a little weird, but it was definitely an experience of a lifetime. Really cool. My GF totally loved it. She had an amazing time. It's not something I would want to do every month though, winky face. In conclusion, the funny thing is this other pilot also fully sided with us when we told him our story. He too told us that if you're on a flight but you don't feel confident or you have some concerns about the way things go, then the best thing to do is not to board the plane or to exit if you're already on board. Always trust your gut feeling. And honestly, maybe I am being a little overly dramatic, fair enough, but I can't help shake off the feeling that YouTube might just have saved our lives. At least that's what I believe, because without all those awesome videos, suggestions and warnings, we would never have been the wiser. And I'm very grateful for the tuber who reached out to us. Thanks for reading. Story 2. Am I the entitled person? I had to fly to San Diego for work last week at 30-ish weeks pregnant. Bear with me. I know Reddit hates pregnant people, but I really think I handled this one the right way. I was flying American Airlines, and when you book your flight, you pick your seat. I booked a few weeks in advance and chose a seat that was towards the middle of the plane closest to the bathroom, and I selected an aisle seat. I paid $78 for my seat because it's considered a premium seat due to legroom. My return flight was a red-eye, and as I waited at the airport to check the seats for any closer to the restroom, I noticed that the row I selected as well as the one directly across were mostly empty. Great. I don't mind getting up to move for others on a flight. I usually would take the window seat, but due to being so far into pregnancy, I was advised by my OB to get up every 1 to 2 hours and walk around to avoid the risk of blood clots. She also wanted me to drink a lot of water on the flight, hence the proximity to the bathroom. Because of this, I booked an aisle seat, partially for convenience but also so I wouldn't have to bother or potentially wake sleeping passengers on an 8-hour red-eye every 1 to 2 hours to walk around or pee. Like I said, I paid a fee for this assigned seat. So boarding happens and I see that the flight has filled out a bit, and now there are no empty seats in either row. No issue. I've made the necessary accommodations and I'm not relying on empty seats on anyone else to do any type of switch. So this doesn't impact me at all. If people need to get up and move, great, a reminder for me to get some steps in. I'm sitting in my seat and the woman who will be taking the window seat boards and we chat a bit and she says not to worry, she won't be a bother getting up and down as she plans to sleep, and I tell her not to worry, if she needs to get up she won't be bothering me, and tell her I have to get up to walk anyway. Towards the end of boarding, a very, very tall man comes and he's in the aisle helping a woman who is in the aisle seat next to mine, but like across the aisle if that makes sense, to put her bag in the overhead bin. At this point I have my AirPods in, but I'm on alert as I'm aware there is someone in the middle seat and I'll have to get up and let them in. It becomes apparent that this man has the middle seat in my row while his wife has the aisle seat next to mine, so I am essentially sat right between them. I pull out my headphone and offer to switch aisle seats so they can sit next to one another. There is a bit of a language barrier and she gestures next to her at a boy, maybe 8 to 10 years old, and says this is her son and she doesn't want to leave him alone in the row. So I nod and say okay, totally makes sense, and stand to let her husband into the middle seat. Hey race where I was called entitled. The man asks for me to switch with him so he can sit next to his wife. Thinking maybe it didn't register to him that I am pregnant, I jokingly gestured to my very obvious bump and explained the bathroom and the frequent walks. He says he doesn't mind, he will get up. I said no, I'm sorry. I paid for the aisle seat so that I would be able to get up and move freely as needed during the flight and not have to disturb anyone. He again insisted that he needed to be able to sit with his wife and child, and I suggested they speak to the flight attendant about moving seats. The FA obviously didn't have much of a solution for them, so they spent the entire flight leaning across me to talk to one another, passing drinks and snacks across my lap, blocking my laptop screen, and getting up and down frequently to make me suffer. Fine, whatever, doesn't bother me. However, when there started to be a frequency of elbows to my baby bump during their discussions, I let the FA know what was going on and they were told to stop reaching across me. My husband says I was entitled and playing the pregnancy card. Is he right? Story 3. Entitled Basketball Parents. This happened several years ago, but every time I think of this, I just have to shake my head. I F30, at the time, was in my 3rd year of coaching a 5-6-year-old girls basketball team. I did not have a kid on the team but had started with this team while coaching a friend's daughter. She had moved on to a 7/8 grade team, but I agreed to stay on another year. Note that this is a volunteer, unpaid position. I did not live in the team district and had quite a drive to the gym where we met twice a week for practice and/or practice/games. It is always interesting dealing with parents, but this year was tougher than the previous years. For example, parents would be late picking their kids up for practice, and of course I had to wait with the kids until they were claimed. One kid stopped coming to the practices and only showed up at games. The parents got mad at me when I told them the kid would not play in the next game unless she came to practice. It seemed like every week there was some kind of issue or complaint. Then the straw that broke the camel's back. At the end of the season, we play in a few tournaments where we would play a couple games on a given day. For the first tournament, I bought donuts for the kids to eat after the games, which they were excited about. After the kids had their fill, I offered the remaining donuts to the parents. As I was gathering up the balls, the medical kit, and the scorebook, I was tapped on the shoulder. It was one of the mothers. "Are you the one who brought the donuts?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. I had not gotten a single thank you from any parent this year for coaching the kids or setting up the tournaments, and was ready for some positive feedback. "Next time," she replied with almost contempt. "Don't get so many with sprinkles." And she walked away. I am usually quick with a comeback, but I was speechless. The following week did not bring donuts. The following year did not coach. Story 4. My online friend lied about me and manipulated everyone else into believing that he's innocent. 2 years ago, on Christmas Day, I was having fun with my friends online. I moved recently and didn't go to school, so I didn't have any friends IRL. One friend in particular, who I'll call K, was pretty well known and so often got harassed by people attempting to dox him. This angered me, and since I was 14 at the time, I said something horrendously stupid. I said, "I could just dox the doxers, but I don't know how to do that." This upset K and everyone else. Talking me out of it was no use, since I still have misery for misery ideals. So they just decided to call me out and block me from everywhere. So basically my Christmas gift was to become friendless. How nice. Having no friends drove me into a depression and gave me anxiety, and I started taking meds, which I still do today. Meanwhile, as I was in a hospital, K started making lies about me to all his friends. He said stuff like, "Oh, that kid's deaf, going full throttle on the doxing," and "If you're contacting her, I'm blocking you for good." And guess what? Everyone believed it. K successfully painted a 14-year-old in a hospital as a doxing mastermind. Time would go on, and my old friends would start to listen to me more, forgiving me and saying it's their fault, not K's. In fact, K himself never apologized. K and I would have an on-again, off-again relationship, And right now he has me blocked again, but this time I'm done being his friend. Why? Because I realized I know his true nature. I wrote an entire document and TikTok videos calling the guy out. I had proof. And still, K manipulates them. They're all saying, oh, you need consent to post the evidence. No, I don't. I hid all the names. Nobody will know it's you unless you say it is. But yeah, that pretty much sums up my story. For now. Sorry about the long post and feel free to ask questions and stuff.